Hello, dear Chinese partners. I am Maxim Bronevsky, assistant to the Doctor of Sciences and academician Yuri Ivanov, who has done tremendous work in physics and quantum mechanics. Now I will try in this brief presentation to explain some subtle aspects that may not be fully understood by our Chinese partners. I will try to highlight them in this presentation. So, let's move on to the most important thing. This is theory. In 1959, an experiment was conducted by American physicists Robert Pound and Glenn Rebka. The task of this experiment was to confirm the effect of gravitational time dilation and gravitational redshift. During the experiment, the fact was clearly established that when a material body consisting of atoms is in the gravitational field of the Earth, the frequencies of the atoms change. Those atoms that are located closer to the surface of the planet, their frequencies slow down, and those atoms that are located further away from the planet, their frequencies increase. Thus, a frequency wave gradient is formed at the atomic level. According to this experiment, academician, our scientific supervisor, Dr. Yuri Ivanov, made a logical conclusion: it is quite possible that the difference in frequencies between the atoms creates a force that pulls the body down to the planet, the so-called gravitational acceleration in the gravitational field. And then he decided to conduct a simulation of this process. So Dr. Ivanov conducted geometric and computer modeling of processes, and very interesting things were discovered, which I will demonstrate now. We have a wave source 1 and a wave source 2. Now we do not say which waves are emitted by the sources, since at this stage we do not need it.
На данном этапе это нам не нужно. Итак, первый источник излучает у нас волну.
The first wave source emits a wave of a certain frequency and in a certain phase.
Определенной частоты и определенной фазы.
The second source emits an oncoming wave of the same frequency and in the same phase. And in the process of computer modeling, a very interesting phenomenon was revealed. If we shift the phase of the wave source 1 in this system, we shifted the phase by 90 degrees. Then our system, this whole system, together with the sources, suddenly begins to move in this direction, that is, the force manifests itself. Accordingly, it was revealed that if we shift the phase in the opposite direction by 90 degrees, then our whole system, together with the sources, began to move in the opposite direction. It was clearly modeled on the computer, and a consistent pattern was visible. Then it was decided to move from computer modeling directly to the experiment, which was done. We have conducted many experiments on mechanical waves in water and in the air. And our last experiment was a boat experiment. The boat that we also sent to China for CASC specialists. What was revealed in this experiment? What did we want to do? We have a wave source 1 and a wave source 2. These wave sources create mechanical waves at a frequency of 20 kHz in water. That is, I will now schematically draw what happened here. Wave source 1 emits a wave. Wave source 2 emits an oncoming wave at the same frequency of 20 kHz and in the same phase. In this case, our system is standing still. But when we experimentally begin to shift the phase by 90 degrees, then our boat begins to move. This whole system is starting to move. The force manifests itself immediately. In this direction. Accordingly, as soon as we shift the phase in the opposite direction by 90 degrees, our boat is starting to move in this direction. That is, in this way we have experimentally confirmed that on mechanical waves, the phase shift in standing waves leads to motion. It's not as simple as it seems at first glance. There are some peculiarities here, dependencies that we know and that are our know-how, but we know all these dependencies because we have conducted a large number of experiments in mechanical waves. And the next stage is the transfer of this method of propulsion for vacuum. Now we switch to the picture with a vacuum. So we know that mechanical waves do not propagate in a vacuum, but electromagnetic waves of different frequencies propagate in a vacuum. And our computer simulation shows that if we create a system with a certain frequency in a vacuum at super high frequencies, according to our same principle, now I will draw it. That is, our system is in a vacuum. There is first source of super high frequencies and second source of super high frequencies. Also, one source emits one wave. And the second source emits a counter wave. As a result, we have again organized a system of standing waves already in a vacuum. And now we shift the phase by 90 degrees at the second source. And our system, according to our assumption, will have to move there. That is, the task now is to create a laboratory and conduct a series of experiments with different frequencies in the range of microwave radiation for creation of propulsive force in a vacuum. That is, in this way, according to our assumptions, we can get a very impressive thrust, which will allow us to move in a vacuum, already on electromagnetic waves. That's actually why we need funding and research and development laboratory.
Еще раз скажу, чтобы этого добиться, нам придется
To achieve this, we will have to organize and retrain a small team of engineers and scientists.
Переквалифицировать их, так как их физические знания они не будут соответствовать.
To retrain them, since their physical knowledge will not match our knowledge, we will have to retrain people, because physics has not dealt with this at all yet.
Это новое для физики. Поэтому придется провести некоторые процессы.
Therefore, we will have to carry out the teaching process, and then our scientific team will start working and conducting experiments to create an experimental device for propulsion in a vacuum. That is, the principle is the same in all waves. I hope our Chinese partners have understood this. The essence of the principle is the organization of standing waves and the creation of a phase or frequency difference in these waves, to manifest the force either in this direction or in the opposite direction. To do this, we need to make a lot of research work. And then we will have the first experimental device for propulsion in a vacuum. After that, as we assume, we will be able to create the first prototype of the phase-frequency propulsion drive for satellites. Thus, we will be able to make a phase-frequency propulsion drive that will allow the satellite to remain in orbit for decades. The satellite will not need any ionized gas, fuel, and so on. That is, the satellite will fly in orbit for decades. According to our assumptions, the satellite will have enough solar panels to power our propulsion drive. I have to repeat, we will have the same history as with the creation of transistors. I will give an analogy of how transistors appeared. The first transistors consumed a lot of power. And now we have microchips with 1 million transistors in every smartphone, which consume a small amount of power in a smartphone from a small battery only. Here we have a similar situation. We need to create the first phase frequency propulsion drive. And when we successfully create it, then we will modernize it and reduce power usage. This is quite realistic to do according to our calculations. So this is the first generation of phase frequency propulsion drives for satellites. The second generation, these will be more breakthrough propulsion drives. These are the propulsion drives that will create a technological breakthrough for all mankind. That is, the craft in which such a propulsion drive will be installed will be able to rise directly from the surface of the planet, go into space, then fly to Moon and land on the Moon. That is, as soon as we create a second-generation propulsion drive, we will no longer need any rockets that put satellites into orbit, and so on. We will have a full-fledged universal craft that will take off from the surface of the planet and land on the surface of any other planet, Moon, and so on. Thus, it will be possible to quickly colonize the Moon and other planets with the help of such technologies. And the third generation of phase-frequency propulsion drives, these are drives that will allow us to create vehicles that can move underwater. Such vehicles will be truly universal. They will move underwater, then take off from under the water, fly into space immediately, and fly to any planet in the solar system, to the Moon, and so on. That is, it will be a universal vehicle that will move in any environment with very high speeds. That is, if it moves underwater, it will be an order of magnitude faster than any modern submarines. This is a new generation universal vehicle, which has not yet been on planet Earth.
Вот такие перспективы.
These are the prospects that await us after we implement this project. I hope our Chinese partners have understood key points from this presentation.
Мы готовы ответить на любые вопросы.
We are ready to answer any questions and are ready to hold a conference in Zoom to provide any additional information for CASC specialists. Thank you for your attention.